Roll call, day 5, Friday, February 16th, 2024. Anderson? Here. Baldwin? Here. Barlow? Present. Beitman? Boner? Bouchard? Here. Brennan? Here. Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Dockstetter? Here. Ellis? Present. French? Here. Furphy? Here. Garou? Here. Hicks? Landon? Here. Excuse me. Hutchings? Here. Ide? Here. Jones? Here. Kinski? Here. Kolb? Present. Larson? Here. McEwen? Here. Nethercott? Here. Pappas? Here. Rothfuss? Here. Salazar? Here. Schuler? Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Here. Hicks? Excused. President Driscoll?
Here.
30 present, 1 excused.
Prayer by Pastor J.R. Atkins of the Grace United Methodist Church.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I got here early enough to have breakfast and meet some people. And I would tell you that I am pleased with the heart of the individuals that I've met. I see that God is good and God is amongst us. Let us pray. Good morning, Lord. Be with us as we have discussions today. We pray that they will be in-depth and meaningful. Help us as we try to stay true to our convictions while listening to others with sometimes strange ideas. Help us listen for understanding. And Lord, help us find those solutions that will be beneficial to most. We're grateful for the friendships that form. And Lord, I pray that they withstand sometimes the difficult conversations and positions that this body must take. Lord, I pray for understanding and compassion for our fellow humans. And finally, Lord, I ask that you continue to bless the great state of Wyoming. Amen.
Amen. Senator Landon, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading, correction, approval of journal.
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 15, 2024 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
Any objections? There being none, the report is adopted. Chaplain of the day, as you well know, is Pastor J.R. Atkins, Grace United Methodist Church. Doctor for the day is Jason Bloomberg. Nurse for the day is Kim Morse, RN, and Barbara Clegg, RN. Today in Wyoming history, in 1890, Robert C. Morris, son of Esther Hobart Morris, suggested the Equality State logo. That's served Wyoming very well through the years, and we're pretty proud of that one. Quote for the day: the budget is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and aspirations. Jack Lew. Today is the last day for bill introductions. Budget Bill Committee of the Whole is continued. Deadline today at 5 p.m. for second reading amendment requests. Approvals for the drafted amendment are due Sunday, February 18th at noon. So Sunday at noon for your amendments. Thank you. Pastor Atkins, I have a certificate of thank you for you, and very much appreciate you folks play a key role in this ability today.
Well, thank you. We'll continue to pray for you all.
Thank you.
Sir, may I have the privilege of the floor? Folks, in your mailboxes, you've been provided a blue ribbon in honor of our men and women in blue, law enforcement, and in honor of the late Officer Krinky. So you're invited to wear that to show your solidarity with the family and with law enforcement. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I see standing in the back of the room, honoring military members. Fellow senators, we're proud to have Wyoming's Adjutant General, I might have to have him say the title for me, Major General Greg Porter with us here today to recognize Sergeant Rebecca Bridger of the 67th Army Band and Miss Wyoming USA 2023, and Technical Sergeant Ashton Henry of the Wyoming Air National Guard, 253rd Security Forces Squadron, awarded Best M320 Shooter of the Grenade Launcher. He is part of a team who won the Best Security Forces Marksman trophy during the Global Strike Challenge, the world's premier security forces competition. Please join me in recognizing the incredible service of these individuals. Major General Porter, I invite you to say some remarks.
Mr. President, thank you very much for the privilege of the floor this morning. Thank you to all of you senators that do the great work for the residents of Wyoming. It truly is a privilege to be here, and more of a privilege to introduce you to a couple of folks here in a minute that really exemplify the quality of people we have serving in the National Guard. Thought I'd just give you a quick update on what's going on in your Wyoming Guard and then turn it over to some great warriors. You know, I'll tell you the nation still needs the Guard. We currently have 140 airmen deployed to Africa Command, specifically Djibouti, with 4 of our C-130H aircraft. As you have no doubt heard, it's a little spicy over there at the moment, but I tell you, we had a visit with them early January, and they're doing a fantastic job in country. We expect to get them back pretty quick. First part of next month, early part of next month, we'll bring them back, but then we'll turn around and get about 80 more airmen ready to go, and these guys are going to be spread out all across the globe. They're virtually serving in every one of the geographic combatant commands, from CENTCOM to EUCOM to AFRICOM to INDOPACOM to NORTHCOM, and we'll continue to support the fight. Really, shortly after that, then the Army's going to start deploying again. This summer, into July, first part of August, the 2nd of the 300th Field Artillery, which is our HIMARS battalion, will deploy with their forward support company, the 920th. About 6 months after that, the 115th Field Artillery Brigade, with really all the members of their signal company and their target acquisition platoon, will deploy. Both those missions are 9 months, boots on ground, and they'll be in the Central Command area of operations. They've done this mission before, but by this time next year, we'll have just short of 1/3 of the Wyoming Army National Guard structure deployed, doing missions in the world. You know, many of you have heard about the Tower 22 attack that happened in Jordan. What hasn't been quite as publicized is the 3 servicemen that were killed were reservists, but 40 of the injured soldiers were guardsmen, about 30 of them from the Arizona National Guard. So we continue as the National Guard to put the blood and sweat of our members in protection of this country. We are the sword and shield. We are ready and we must win. To tell you the truth, I see no scenario, if we fight another nation state, that our homeland is not held at risk. And that's certainly something we have not thought about since World War II. But I tell you, it's on all of our minds today. I will also tell you that we are really privileged to have the quality of people that we have serving our Guard. And I am certainly privileged today to introduce you to a couple of them. First off, I'd like to introduce Sergeant Rebecca Bridger. Sergeant Bridger, if you'd come up and address the folks.
Well, first of all, thank you, sir. It's a great honor to be here. It's an honor to stand before you today I am deeply sorrowed as our state mourns the deaths of Wyoming's own Sheridan Police Department Sergeant Nevada Krinke and Wyoming National Guard soldier Sabrina Geller. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Beck Bridger from the city of Sheridan, Wyoming. I stand before you today as a soldier, a vocalist, and Miss Wyoming USA 2023. Thank you. My journey, like many, has been one of trials, triumph, and transformation. From the moment I took my oath, received my uniform, and served my time before promoting to Sergeant Bridger of the 67th Army Band, Wyoming Zone, I embarked on a unique journey. My path was not just about serving my country, but also about finding the strength to overcome personal challenges along the way. As a daughter, I witnessed the devastating effects that stage 4 cancer had over my mom. In the early mornings and late nights of caregiving, music became my peace. As a vocalist for the Wyoming National Guard, I have discovered the transformative power of song, its ability to heal wounds, mend broken hearts, and inspire hope. It has been through music that I have found my voice, a voice that has resonated not only with soldiers, but civilians across the state and nation. But little did I know that my journey was far from over. Just as I thought the worst was behind us, my mom was diagnosed with atypical Alzheimer's just yesterday. This chapter of my life has often felt like a relentless battle. Yet in the face of adversity, I have refused defeat. As Miss Wyoming USA 2023, I have vowed to be a light of hope, a symbol of resilience for those facing similar struggles, and an advocate for women in the military. The 67th Army Band is so much more than a musical ensemble. Our mission is clear. We serve the Wyoming National Guard with musical missions that foster patriotism within our communities, uplift spirits, and unite hearts through the healing power of music. It is through music that we embody the sword and shield. In times of crisis, we stand as a beacon of light, offering hope to those in need. Through our missions, we honor the sacrifices of our brave men and women in uniform, paying tribute to their courage, their valor, and their unwavering commitment to service. However, our mission extends beyond the battlefield. It reaches into the hearts and souls of civilians, offering hope, healing, and inspiration. It is my prayer that I can continue fostering hope through music as a soldier, vocalist, and pageant queen. I'm incredibly grateful to the Wyoming National Guard for gifting me the opportunity to continue being that light for women around the world, whether they're serving in the U.S. Army or competing on the Miss USA stage, or both. As always, ride for the brand. Thank you.
Good morning. I don't do this very often, so bear with me. I'm Tech Sergeant Ashton Henry, part of the 253rd Security Forces Squadron. Originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, I joined the Guard right out of high school, completing basic training and tech school. I went back to my unit at the 189th Airlift Wing. After some time, I realized I wanted to serve full-time. With the limited positions in Little Rock, I knew I would need to look at different units. I saw a position open in the Wyoming Air National Guard, applied, and received the position. Joining at a young age, I had the opportunity to work for many leaders and NCOs who got me to where I am today. Trained me up, got me very proficient at my job. But with proficiency came comfortability, laziness, and I was not setting the example for my troops that I needed to be. In Global Strike, there's a competition called the Global Strike Challenge that's hosted every 2 years, where every Security Forces squadron under Global Strike come together to compete in a week-long event testing a team's mental and physical limits. My unit had a team compete in 2019, and I missed out because I was fat and lazy. I told myself no matter what, when the next opportunity to join the team came around, I would try out. Years later, the opportunity to try out for the next team came up, and I was still in the same position, lazy, unmotivated. I convinced myself that I was not going to try even though I knew what the opportunity meant and how big of a deal this competition was. One of my senior leaders heard that I wasn't going to try to make the team and pulled me aside. He told me that even though I didn't think I'm ready to at least push myself out of my comfort zone and try. After some thought, I said, screw it. I'm going to push myself through this tryout. So I get through every event, pushing myself even though I thought everyone around me was passing me up. And I was just thanking God, it's over. I made it through this tryout. I'm done. This is it. A couple of days later, I receive a phone call. Henry, you made the team. At first, I was thrown back saying, you got that wrong, man. That's not right. You got that messed up. He said, nope, you made it. Do you want the spot? I said yes and hung up the phone. As soon as I hung up the phone, I had an oh crap moment. I'm still fat, out of shape, and this event is no joke. I knew I had to make a real change. I swallowed my pride and called a coach, told him the position I was in and that I needed help. He gave me a plan and I took off from there. Going into the gym, I was a guy that you could clearly tell had no idea what he was doing. He looked at me like, yeah, he shouldn't be in here. But regardless, I told myself that I was doing this and I was going to figure this stuff out for my team. I did not want to be the guy that they had to drag through it. A couple months later, I joined my team 50 pounds down, ready to get after it and perform. Going into the competition, overall, our team was able to win the overall marksmanship trophy, and with the help of my spotter, Master Sergeant Knapsager, who's standing in the back right there, I was able to win top shot for the M320 grenade launcher. Going to this event, it was amazing to get the opportunity to go through the mental and physical pain as a team. Knowing I can lean on and trust the men and women next to me to get through challenges. This story is just one of many examples of why I call the Wyoming Guard home. It's a place that encourages you to push yourself past your limits and to help the men and women next to you. That's why I choose to ride for the brand. Thank you.
Hey, great job by those folks. I was shaking some pretty sweaty hands there. But they did a great job, didn't they? They did a great job. Hey, listen, just thank you for your time. I know you're incredibly busy. I wanted to acknowledge the leadership of our chairman, Senator Brian Boner, who chairs the Senate Transportation and Military Affairs. Thank you for your leadership, sir. And again, I want to thank all of you, because I know you are working tremendously hard for vast amounts of pay. So thank you so much for what you do. We are the Sword and Shield. Ride for the bread.
Senator McEwen, all our military people, please come up and take a picture with these guys. I'd really like to get one. This is it's a great moment. So all our military. Unfortunately, I won't be in the picture. I'm going to do it after they do all the military stuff. So I'll take one after. I'm going to come up and stand. Absolutely, everybody. We have, I could not see it from where I was at. We have a whole bunch of members of his team up in the gallery. Let's recognize them all and give them a huge thank you. Granted.
Mr. President, privilege of the floor.
Granted.
Mr. President, there's one of those colonels up there is actually a high school classmate of mine, Miss Tina Tweedy from Gillette, Wyoming. And it would not be right. Her mother would not let me live it down if I didn't get the opportunity to introduce. She's so proud of her daughter. Mother and daughter are so proud of their daughter. And I'm so proud of my very good friend. Tina Tweedy, Colonel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Reports from standing committees.
February 15, 2024. Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 22, Public Service Commission Electricity Reliability, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Senator Case, Chairman. February 15, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom was referred Senate File 23, Public Utilities, Energy Resource Procurement, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Boner, Case, Landon, and Scott. Senator Case, Chairman. February 15, 2024, Mr. President, Committee number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom was referred Senate File 65, Temporary Water Use Agreements Amendments, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators French, Hicks, Ide, Kolb, Larson, and Steinmetz. Senator Steinmetz, Chairman. February 15, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom was referred Senate File 54, Homeowner Tax Exemption, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, French, Ide, and McEwen. No, Senator Pappas. Senator Beitman, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Quick announcement, just so everybody understands. We're getting some committees that are starting to get some holes, so you may see some assignments between chairmen of committees to move bills back and forth. Don't think it's any evil moves, folks. All I ask is both chairman and the bill sponsor have to agree. And absent objection from you folks, and you're more than free to if you don't like it, but you'll see some swaps. But it requires a consent of chairman on both sides and the bill sponsor. And as long as that happens, if you've got a committee that's got an empty spot, because we're trying to get stuff through. So you're more than game, and I just wanted for the public to understand that if we get a bill that goes to a non-appropriate committee in their eyes, it's done for the matter of efficiency and the body understands it. Thank you. Bills on second reading. Senate File 3, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 3, State Employee Leave for Volunteer Fire or Volunteer EMS.
Senate File 3, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Senate File 9, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 9, Parental Rights in Education.
Senate File 9, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 38, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 38, Financial Reporting Amendments 2.
Senate File 38, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 60, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 60, 2024 Large Project Funding.
Senate File 60, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Senate File 70, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 70, Investment Modernization State Non-Permitted Funds 2.
Senate File 70, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 90, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 90, State-Managed Local Government Equity Investment Pool.
There is an amendment. Could we have the amendment read in, please?
Senate File 90, second reading amendment number 1, page 5 after line 9, insert.
Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 90 and ask for your favorable vote. What my amendment does or intends to do here is just to make sure, since we're setting up a new account, that these funds will be invested solely for the pecuniary interest of those who will benefit from the funds. These funds won't be invested in any sort of way that would jeopardize the returns or for social engineering purposes or any other reasons other than to maximize the return on these investments. As you can see in the language here, be invested based solely on pecuniary factors and invested in a way that does not subordinate the interests of the beneficiaries of the investment fund under this paragraph to other objectives, including sacrificing investing returns or undertaking additional investment risk to promote non-pecuniary factors. Pretty cut and dry, and I ask for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion, Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the amendment, I think that, there's been a lot of talk about ESG policy, and the SLIB board has been taking it up virtually at every meeting. And, I think they've come up and got us into a good place. I think they've done good work with that. And while, some of us may have differing opinions on what some of these goals are, I think that it's very important to make sure that this kind of language is there. I appreciate it, and I urge your support. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Further discussion. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd express some caution here. It's important we get Senate File 90 through. It's going to benefit the finances of our local governments in Wyoming. The restrictions on Senate File 90 is that they invest the funds in the same program that we invest our state funds. So what this amendment does is say, this doesn't apply to the totality of our funds. As I read it, and clear me up if I'm wrong, but this only amends the fund in this bill. So it doesn't apply to the other equities. And what the bill was trying to achieve was to have a local government pool administered by the treasurer under the same program. And so you could even commingle funds, Mr. Chairman, or have parallel investment strategies as the rest of the state funds. And this says, no, we're going to take this other set of funds and there'd be more restrictions. Now, we could argue about there being more restrictions or not and all the reasons for that, but that should apply to everything, not just a subset of new funds. It's inconsistent.
Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we have terms that we use, and maybe we use them in everyday language, but pecuniary for those, and non-pecuniary, if I'm saying it correctly, because I don't use it, it's not in mine normally, is either we want to make money or we're not making money. I think, let's put that in that context. It's about making best returns. I think that's what the bringer of this amendment is saying. We want to ensure the best returns. We're not going to base what we invest on non-fungible, non-return type components. So on and for the amendment, recognizing that there may be some concerns about where they can be invested, but on and for the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President. Speaker.
Chairman Ginsky.
Thank you. On and for the amendment, I think it's a well-written amendment as to whether it creates a different set of criteria than other funds. The state treasurer has now adopted a policy that's substantially similar to this, different words, but if I were the state treasurer, I'd say I think this is perfectly consistent with our policy and wouldn't have any problem with it. I think it's a good amendment. I intend to vote for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President.
Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I have actually gotten word from over there that my good friend from Sheridan is exactly right. That's exactly the feelings from across the street on this amendment. Thank you, Mr.
Your comment. We are, no second time, okay, we're about to vote on second reading amendment number 1 on Senate File 90. It'll be a voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Second reading number 1 to Senate File 90 has passed the Senate. We're back on the bill. Senate File 90 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Bill's on 3rd reading. Oh, I lost my consent list. Bills on 3rd reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a consent list?
Mr. President, I do have a consent list. Mr. President, Senate File 2, Legislative Budget. Senate File 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters, Continued Retirement Benefits. Senate File 8, Health Insurance for Volunteer Emergency Responders. Senate File 15, Acceptance of Retrocession Federal Military Installations. Senate File 17, Plane Coordinate System Amendments. Senate File 21, Public Utilities Net Power Cost Sharing Ratio. Senate File 30, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses, Judges Amendments. Senate File 35, Public Records, DOC and Investigations. Senate File 55, Board of Equalizations, questions before the board.
Would anyone like any of the bills removed from the consent list? Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Senate File 2, Legislative Budget. Senate File 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters, Continued Retirement Benefits. Senate File 8, Health Insurance for Volunteer Emergency Responders. Senate File 15, Acceptance of Retrocession Federal Military Installations. Senate File 17, Plane Coordinate System Amendments. Senate File 21, Public Utilities Net Power Cost Sharing Ratio. Senate File 30, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses, Judges Amendment. Senate File 35, Public Records, DOC Investigations. Senate File 55, Board of Equalization, questions before the board. Chief will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson? Aye. Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski?
Aye.
Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
On the consent list, 31 aye. Senate File 2, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 2, 31 aye. Senate File 4, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 4, 31 aye. Senate File 8, are there any changes? Spiteman? Aye to no. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Aye. Aye to no. French? Aye to no. Case? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 8, 25 aye, 6 no. Senate File 15, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 15, 31 aye. Senate File 17, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 17, 31 aye. Senate File 21, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 21, 31 aye. Senate File 30, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 30, 31 aye. Senate File 35, are there any changes? Case, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 35, 30 aye, 1 no. Senate File 55, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 55, 31 aye.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to Senate, Senate File 2, Legislative Budget, Senate File 4, Rehiring Retired Firefighters Continued Retirement Benefits, Senate File 8, Health Insurance for Volunteer Emergency Responders, Senate File 15, Acceptance of Retrocession Federal Military Installations, Senate File 17, Plane Coordinates System Amendments, Senate File 21, Public Utilities Net Power Cost Sharing Ratio, Senate File 30, Influencing Jurors and Witnesses Judges Amendment, Senate File 35, Public Records DOC Investigations, and Senate File 55, Board of Equalization Questions Before the Board, have passed the Senate. Senator Steinmetz.
Mr. President, could I take a brief privilege of the floor?
Yes, ma'am, you may.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. So I was hoping before we got to introduction votes, that we could have a little bit of a discussion because we had had some objections on the Ag Committee membership, and I just wanted to address that. I visited with our staff, and it was under Senate Rule 2-7C that you appointed an extra member to our committee last session. The House did not object to that appointment, and the Senate did not object to that appointment, so it was ratified without objection. So I was hoping just to clear that up before we go into any other voting on Ag Committee bills, because obviously the omnibus water will be coming up during this next introduction vote. And so I was hoping to clear that up, Mr. President, before we went into introduction votes. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that matter was referred to the Rules Committee, and I'll look forward to the scheduling of a Rules Committee meeting so that we can actually have this discussion in that venue. Thank you, Mr. President.
I will notice the Rules Committee. I do not believe we should do it today. I could do it today. Absent your objection, Senator Barlow, you who brought it, we will deal with it. But duly noted, and I very much appreciate the research and the effort. But we're formally into rules, I believe. Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. President, and I appreciate looking forward to that Rules Committee, but I do think it's important for the body to understand that this is still an issue that isn't resolved yet, and the rules are a little less clear than I think they were presented. And reading Rule 27C about committee membership, that rule states, if the joint rules of the House and Senate do not conform to the voting requirements of Senate Rule 17.1, which I won't read, but they don't, the presiding officer may appoint a like number of members to any standing committee as appointed to the committee's counterpart in the House of Representatives. And I'll just note, Mr. President, that my reading of that would indicate that there are two possible memberships that are in order. One is 5 members, the other is 9 members. And that's something that we should look at in the Rules Committee, but I think it's important to understand what that rule specifically says as we contemplate moving forward.
We're going to stand at each sound of the gavel for about 2 minutes. I'm going to go back and confer with leadership, with the minority leadership and the Senate leadership, and meet at the back of the room.
This is on. Ogden, this is on.
Okay, everybody, just so we don't go in a panic, we're getting a little advice on things. We're going to go into committee of the whole till approximately 11:10 to 11:15. And then we're rolling into bill introductions, and we'll run a pretty good segment of bill introductions about the budget committee of the whole. So I want to get a piece of that budget, because we're obligated to have the budget done today, correct, Ellen? So budget committee of the whole. So with that, I've got Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that the Senate resolve itself in the committee of the whole to consider only the budget bill, Senate File 1, for the general appropriations of government.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Senator Baldwin, please approach the desk.
Did y'all hear that? Committee of the whole will come to order, please. I believe we need to, do we need to remove the bill? We need to move the bill, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, or?
Dave, you need to move the bill.
Okay, gotcha. Senator Kinski, would you like to move the bill?
Mr. Chairman, don't we have to read the Senate file first?
We do. Mr. Engler.
Senate File 1, General Government Appropriations, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 1 do pass. Folks, before we get into the next agency, which according to my notes, we left off at 102, Board of Law Examiners, we had some outstanding questions from yesterday, and I believe we're ready to address those. My notes reflect first on Attorney General 15. Senator Ellis had a question about the number of attorneys. Has that question been answered, Senator Ellis? That's been answered. Next, on DEQ, there was a question by Senator Hicks regarding the number of Class 6 well permits per year the one FTE person can handle, and I believe Senator Anderson has a response from the department in that regard. Did you get them? Yes, I did. Okay.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, regarding the DEQ and the Class 6 wells, questions were from how many Class 6 permits can permit writer write per year, kind of like how many woodchuck chucks, and what does a permit writer do, was it? Two questions we registered. So the response is Class 6 permits are highly complex and require extensive scientific and technical skills to review and provide ongoing oversight. So that is not just one person doing that, that's a multitude of people. To review and issue permits in 8 to 10 months, each FTE should be able to process up to 5 permit applications per year. After a permit is issued, the FTE is also responsible for oversight and monitoring activities. With the current in-house applications and anticipated submittals this year, DEQ will have up to 40 applications. At 5 permits per FTE, DEQ would require 8 FTEs. DEQ currently has 2 FTEs writing permits. Another 2 FTE are proposed in this budget request, taking us up to 4 FTE. DEQ will continue to evaluate the resource needs for the program. The necessary skill sets include chemistry, geophysics, geology, reservoir engineering. These positions also provide technical assistance to the regulated community. DEQ's permit process is to ensure protection of underground sources of drinking water and public health. Answer concluded.
Very good. Any further comments? Senator Kinski.
Any follow-up, Senator Hicks, on that? Okay. Next, in state parks, we had 3 questions, and this is Senator Anderson's committee. Footnote 8, there was a question, I neglected to write down who asked it. Why was the money being taken out of travel and tourism? Footnote 12, Senator Ide asked, could we get some more information on the NEA grant? And footnote 17, Senator Steinmetz asked, what is the High Plains Arboretum takeover by the state all about? Some background was requested on that, Senator Anderson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on tourism, the question on footnote 8 from Senator Hicks was what we were doing with why tourism money for the Capitol curator. And it was brought up that that was tourism because the curator was going to be handling the public to tour the Capitol and set that up and get that all done. So that's why they took it from the tourism board. Let's see, you say there was another one. I don't have another one. Another one on that. I have some others, but.
Go ahead with what you got.
Okay.
Senator Nethercutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a question about the Arboretum, good senators. I think the Travel Committee worked on this topic also during the summer interim and learned a great deal about it. So I do think that there's a good number of us here in this body that has been informed about the incredible and special asset that is the High Plains Arboretum, which is located about 6 minutes from this current Capitol here. And we received this presentation and this history about the High Plains Arboretum. You should know that there's a book. I'm sure we can get you copies passed out about this. This is written by one of the daughters of a staff member here at the Capitol. It's an incredible piece of history about how about 100 years ago, when we were settling the plains here, we obviously needed produce, vegetables, and trees, and other types of vegetation so we could survive out here in the West and on the High Plains. And so that was why the Arboretum was created through a federal program. And researchers lived on the land, and there's housing out there, and then 100-year-old trees of all kinds. And what was produced from that research went throughout the whole state and, of course, the whole region, because if something can grow in Cheyenne, Wyoming, by God, it will grow anywhere. So we are over 6,000 feet, of course, and have the high winds and the arid, dry climate. And so just the hardiest of trees and produce that was researched here and is still living and growing right outside your capital. And so it is considered, and many who are familiar with its history, this cherished state asset. It is directly adjacent to a VA cemetery. And I have to confess that having lived here for so long in Cheyenne, I was unaware of this wonderful, special place until this issue came up in our community. And I drove out there, and like I said, it's a quick 6-minute drive. And it is just transformative for how special it is. Of course, being around that, all of those trees makes it particularly a quite special experience. We have here in Cheyenne the Botanic Gardens, and so we have a specialized group of, I would say, botanists that are absolutely devoted to seeing this through. State Parks is incredibly excited about this project. The City of Cheyenne, of course, is willing to help in any way possible to make sure that this treasure that belongs to our state continues to move forward. And I, of course, wasn't expecting the question right this morning, but there's a significant amount of information. And the support and excitement surrounding the preservation of this incredible Wyoming history, I think, is something really remarkable. So that's the source of it. I look to the chairman of travel, who can maybe provide additional insight, or other Laramie County legislators to share how special this is, and I'm happy to hand out some of that information.
Senator Schuler, as soon as I find you, you can talk. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I think the good senator from Cheyenne did a really great job of explaining this. You know, the big thing is this is an ask originally from the city of Cheyenne. They've been maintaining the property. It was a USDA experimental station for many years, and as the good senator mentioned, many of the seeds and the trees and the things that were grown out there many years ago have not only been transported, you know, throughout Wyoming to help us with proper trees and types of grasses that we should have, but all over the world, quite frankly. And we actually, the TRW committee, we did take a tour out there, took a look at it. It's an amazing facility. Still has some buildings in there that are being used, actually. But it's one of those things that probably, if it's not maintained and taken care of a little bit better, many of those things, there's a really cool greenhouse out there that's probably going to eventually maybe fall apart if something isn't done with it fairly soon. But it was more of a study by our group to see, you know, by State Parks and of course the travel committee to see where we could go with this. We just sort of started our initial studies the first year. We're not certainly done with this, but I think as the good senator mentioned from Cheyenne, the Botanical Gardens group, they're really a really boisterous group, and they have really done a great job of trying to get the High Plains Arboretum on the top of everybody's radar. So hopefully there'll be more to find out and more to study later on, but I appreciate the info.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I found my notes on that. The question was, why are we turning it over to the state parks? The state parks now takes care of it with a cooperative agreement with the city. So all we're doing in this budget is doing the upgrades and the major maintenance. The bill that was referred to down the hall did fail, but that bill was for turning it over to state parks. What we're about here is whether state parks runs it or the city runs it, we want to upgrade that and get it in better shape. So I think that's the answer to the question. The other question from Senator Ide was, what do we get out of this footnote number 12? So I got the request from the agency, and the mission of the Wyoming Arts Council is to enhance the quality of life for the people of Wyoming by providing resources to sustain, promote, and cultivate the arts. The WAC serves every county in the state through a variety of programs and services. The WAC also receives direction from a governor-appointed 10-member advisory board. The arts help define our cultural identity, contribute greatly to the quality of life, our statewide economy, and the development of our communities. And that's the answer they gave me for what we get out of that contribution. Thank you.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly on the Arboretum. I spend a lot of time out there, actually. It's a place where a lot of my friends and I, with our kids, will have potluck picnics. And I can tell you, having spent so much time out there, it's like all things, you can kind of overlove a place. And so there is great opportunity for some confusion, some need for more signs. As the good senator from Laramie County mentioned, there's also a cemetery there. People will take their dogs out there. There's this research facility, there are historic structures. And so it needs a little bit of thought. And I think that the discussion we're having within TRW and right now as a legislature is, what does this unique place mean? And so we want to make sure it's a place that is open to the public, very well respected, but it needs a little bit of attention. If not, it'll continue to probably be loved to death and by users with competing interests of why they visit this place. So would encourage your strong support of the Arboretum.
Senator Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the privilege of saying that this Arboretum is right in the middle of my district. And it's a place that I love, my husband loved, and my dog loved. Like everybody's saying, it is a special place, but it is run down. And I agree with everybody around me about how special this place is, but I think the question is, why are we just all of a sudden adding this money without a whole lot of discussion and knowledge about what we're doing here, Mr. Chair? And that's my comment. Thank you.
Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we've adequately addressed that, I hope I'd move on to Department of Health 048. There was a question about, from Senator Scott about nursing home salaries, and a question from Senator Scott and Senator Rothfuss about the CDC, is the general fund school foundation swap constitutional? And finally, one from Senator Hicks about the amount of the reversions and where is it directed to go? Senator Anderson.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the nursing homes, what we've done for nursing homes to try to bring them up, in 2023, we did a rebasing, one-time only money that brought them up. We also, in this budget, put in another $33 million for ongoing nursing homes. It's 16 million federal funds and 16 million general funds. So they've got the funding to do it. Whether or not they use those for salaries, I don't know, but they've got the funding to take care of it. On the second part, that's Senator Scott and Senator Rothfuss asked, can we use that program money? We are already using that program money in pre-K services. They get foundation money now, so it must be that it's, the person that talked to me said it was perfectly all right. The person that takes care of that, it is for special education and source of public funds, not general funds. So that's why they're using the public funds, public school funds instead of general fund. And Rothfuss isn't here to hear that explanation.
And then the other question was about the dollar amount of the reversions and where were they directed to go?
And Senator Hicks asked about reversions, and the reversions are in section 309. It's about 57 million in the 23-24 years, and it's outlined on page 121 of the budget bill. Thank you. I doubt he was either.
Okay, Senator Kinski, back to you.
I'll get the answer to him. Then in section 053, Department of Workforce Services, you'll recall, this is in page 24 of your SR, Department of Workforce Services. They did a substantial reorganization, and I was stumbling over which were new positions and which were simply transfers. My figure at the number of FTEs was correct. Number of 14 net additional FTEs. Let me tell you where, and then Senator Ide wanted to know what's the department's rationale for each of those. So first, let me tell you where the positions are. On page 24, they are footnote 6 plus 3 positions, footnote 7 plus 1 position, footnotes 10 and 11 plus 1 each, footnote 16 plus 4, footnotes 17 and 18 plus 1 each, footnote 23 plus 1, and footnote 25 plus 1. And then I have had distributed to you, to the floor, you'll find something that says, it's a photocopy of the department's budget request, upper left-hand corner. It says 2025-26 biennium, unit narrative, Department of Family Workforce Services. And then there is a page related to each of the addition of the FTEs. So for instance, the first page says Wyoming Development Training Fund. Second paragraph I've underlined, this request includes 4 FTEs. Their narrative is the unit is currently understaffed, utilizing anywhere from 4 to 8 temporary staff at any given time to keep up with the workload. Because of the reliance on temporary staff, there's a great deal of turnover and time spent on training and retraining. Unit requires steady workforce and stability. So as you go through, you'll see a narrative related to each of those FTEs that's extracted from the department's budget request. And I won't go through all of those, but I think it's a good question to ask for that additional information. And then the next one I had was related to 066, travel and tourism. Let me see if I can find that very quickly in the SR. That is page 28 in the SR and page 48 in the budget book. The question was about collections and the front, so you have a handout that I've distributed from the agency's budget book. And the first page shows their collections in FY22, FY23. And then, the additional question was how much is in the funds, how much are in the funds? And so there's 2 subsequent pages showing they have 2 funds. One is an operations account, 80% of their collections go to that. And the second is a project account, 20% of their collections go to that. And it shows the inflows and outflows on each of those accounts and the balances. So I trust that helps answer that. And I think that clears the desk of all the questions that I've got listed, unless I'm missing. Senator, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to amplify the good chairman's remarks on the Department of Tourism, you also got an email, I believe, in your inbox from Senator Nethercott yesterday. It talks about the collections and the lodging tax. You know, the lodging tax was put in, just started 3 years ago. The first year collections at $25 million, last year at $59 million, or 2 years ago at $59 million, and last year at $57 million. What we're trying to do, and we do this all throughout a lot of our other accounting, to try to understand how funding goes and how much we can rely on it as we take a 5-year rolling average. Your Craig report, a lot of the stuff that we do at CapFin, all is based on 5-year rolling averages. What the Tourism Board and what we've been working on with it is to say, let's get to that 5-year rolling average, and then we can see how it's performing. Then we can also then talk about what's necessary for the department, and then talk about the project account. Going back, as the good chairman said, there's 2 accounts. There's operating budget, which we do advertising, project account, in which we do projects. Back to another question that was earlier addressed about why wayfinding and all that is in there. That was from a request in a previous budget for monies from the tourism project account to facilitate that, to facilitate the wayfinding, because it would seem to be done as for tourists who come here to use Capitol Square. So that's kind of a longer answer. We're just trying to get to that. But I also want to point out one thing. A lot of people say, well, that's a lot more money than we thought it was going to be. I beg to differ. If you go back and look, and I can provide this to you, the Tourism Board right now is tracking from before the lodging tax started, was tracking these numbers and within 5% of the average that they laid out from the very beginning. So these are tracking a lot the way the tourism professionals, the folks on the ground, really thought it would work. And so they're doing a lot of good work today, and those monies are going out to drill down, working with the local DSMs to work to provide tourism assistance at the local level. So each of your communities is getting benefit of that, of the tax that they're collecting on behalf of all of us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I had 2 others. In the engineers budget, Senator Steinmetz wanted to know why we were taking the money out of water, and the House wanted to take it out of water, but they also put it back in the 300 series, the money back into water. So they want to keep taking that money out of water, but they'll take it from the general file to water in the 300 cities. The next area was the DOT, and Senator Steinmetz asked about the Capitol complex, if that function for the police was all day or for the complete complex or what it was. And that is just for night only. The troopers are here during the day, and so those gray uniforms you see are just for night. I don't know if they're gray or brown. They look a little brown to me, but they're just the night. They're contractors. I think they're FNC or something. They're contractors that take care of that at night. Then Senator Hicks asked why we were taking the local government money out of the budget, and they said that they received general file money last budget session, so they did not need the money. And that's all the questions that I had on my list, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Kinski, back to you.
And then to wrap up, Mr. Chairman, I had a question from Senator Schuler on Department 080, Department of Corrections. Why is the Department of Corrections sending some of their inmates to county jails? Is the prison at times full? And the answer is yes, it is at times full. They have an overflow. Very popular place sometimes to be, for reasons that elude me. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to get back onto our regular agenda. And so to tell you where we are, we left off at section 102, Board of Law Examiners. That's on page 39 of your SR, and it is on page 69 of your budget book. And I'll turn it over to Senator Guru.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As just stated, we bring you section 102, Board of Law Examiners, page 69, once again, in your budget, page 39 on the SR. Pretty straightforward stuff here. All come out of special revenue that they generate, and from the legal side. So $241,037. Be glad to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Any questions for Senator Guru? Any discussion? Hearing none, we will close section 102. Back to you, Senator Kinski. Oh, back. Okay. Back to you, Senator Guru.
I'm not sure why.
Or still with you, Senator Guru.
I'm not sure where I'm.
103. Section 103, sir.
Yeah, what? Section 103, Judicial Ethics, right, Commission. That too was pretty self-explanatory, no exception requests. This is one of those ones that I always kind of feel special about, because a couple of years ago on this committee, I thought, boy, I found it here. Boy, there was a lot of problems with some salaries on there. I was going to fix it, that waste, fraud, and abuse stuff. Well, in actuality, I was reading it wrong, and I almost cut the salary of the only employee they have, a nice woman named Wendy Soto. So we're going to give Wendy Soto the love today and say their budget's okay.
Are there questions or discussion on 102? Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we still have good senator from Teton County, I wanted to back up to that last one. Could you explain what the Board of Law Examiners do?
Senator Guru.
There's a shortage of lawyers, I've heard, so I'm going to pass this off to my good friend, Senator Nethercott, so she can explain why it's so important.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They make sure that the lawyers admitted to practice within the state of Wyoming meet the necessary qualifications and successfully pass the Wyoming State Bar exam.
Thank you, Senator Nethercott. Okay, back to you, Senator Kinski, with no further discussion on section 103. 103 is closed. Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, upcoming are the judicial districts. There's a number of them, and Senator Salazar has what is called an in-block motion with respect to those. Senator Salazar, please.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm bringing you a number of sections. Absent objection, Mr. Chairman, I move the Committee of the Whole consider the 26 distinct district courts in block, These 26 district courts can be found in your budget bill on page 70 through 80, and in your SR on pages 40 through 48. Each district court is considered an agency and is comprised of a judge and staff. The district courts are all generally funded and do not have any exception to requests beyond their standard budgets. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there any discussion on those sections, senators? Hearing no discussion, we will close section 120 through 145. That brings us to 151. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I bring you Section 151, District Court, Judicial District 1, which you can find on your SR, page 49, page 80 of the budget. This is one of those areas that is simply straightforward. There are there's nothing really outstanding. You can take a look on page 80, but there is nothing of any great significance with regard to this. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the explanation.
Any discussion on section 151? Seeing none. Section 151 is closed. That brings us to section 157, District Attorney Judicial District number 7. Senator Salazar, please
Thank you,
continue.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I bring Section 157, District Attorney Judicial District 7. You can find that on page, again, 49 or page 80 on your budget book. Again, there is nothing outstanding, nothing to really highlight. It's self-explanatory. With that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude the explanation of Judicial District 7.
Is there discussion on section 157? Seeing none, Senator Salazar, you're just getting warmed up. 157 is closed. That takes us to section 160. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring you Section 160, County and Prosecuting Attorneys, which you can find on page 50 or page 81 on your budget. Again, there is no footnotes on this, self-explanatory. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my explanation.
Thank you, Senator Salazar. Any discussion? Senator Kinski. Oh, sat back down. Any discussion on section 160? Seeing none, that concludes the discussion on section 160 is closed. Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, before the Majority Floor Leader brings you a public service announcement, I just want to get everybody caught up. Our next agency is section 205, Education School Finance. It's on page 81 of the budget book, and it is on page 50 of the SR.
And for a public service announcement, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, it took a little longer to get back through the issues that were raised yesterday in the budget, so here's the current plan is we're going to work till noon, continue on the budget. We are going to adjourn as close to noon as we can. We're going to take 1 hour and 15 minutes. We're going to reconvene at 1:15, and we're going to start into introductions. Approximately, if we go through all of the bills on introductions, we should be done somewhere close to about 3:15, roughly 2 hours to get that through that list on introductions. We will go back into the budget at that point in time and try to finish that out. So, folks, temper your conversations, make your points pointed and on point, and don't talk too much or you might be here a long time. But that, Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman, I've conferred with the President. We think that schedule will work for everybody, so that's the plan. Any questions?
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to the Majority Floor Leader, so it sounds like that by that scenario, we may not go into Committee of the Whole on regular bills. Would that be an accurate interpretation? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
So, Mr. Chairman, We hope to get through a few bills on general file. So that would follow up at the end of the budget. So the last thing that we would do today, again, this depends on how late you guys want to stay, but we really do need to get some bills on general file to keep the process moving. So we do have a second reading and a third reading every day. So the plan is to, yes, at the end of the day, unless it's 7 o'clock at night, we're still on the budget and you guys just say, we don't want to do general file. But right now, to Senator from Campbell County's, that's the process. We will plan contingent upon where we are with the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. I think you named us earlier appropriately, Committee of the Whole hopscotch. Okay, Senator Kinski.
So next up on page 50 of the SR is Education School Finance, Unit 201, or 205. On page 81 of your budget book, Senator Salazar.
Senator Salazar, go ahead,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I bring you Section 205, Education School Finance, which you can find on page 50 of the SR or page 81 on the budget book. I want to highlight to the members of the floor just a few items. Obviously, number one, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $136 million for Superintendent's Letter Number 1 for the sustained external cost adjustment for the total biennium cost of $134,400,000 to the Education Resource Block Grant model for school year 24-25. Secondly, the JAC adopted the Superintendent's Letter Number 1 of $1.7 million for projected K through 12 funding special education reimbursement obligations. The JAC adopted the governor's rec of $500,000, the S5 transferred from the Department of Education, Wyoming Education Trust Fund to the Education School Finance Innovative Education Grants Unit for operational efficiency and budget transparency. Those are the main highlights, pretty straightforward, but again, you can find this on page 81. With that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude the explanation of Section 205.
Are there questions on Section 205? Hearing none, we will close Section 205. The next section for our consideration is Section 206, Wyoming Department of Education. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I bring you Section 206, Department of Education, which can be found on page 51 of the SR or page 83 on your budget book. A couple highlights that I want to briefly describe to the body. The JAC adopted footnote 1 to indicate the Department of Education shall maintain equivalent support to school districts for applied agriculture and farming programs during the 2025-26 biennium. The JAC did adopt footnote 5, authorizing the agency to expend up to $50,000 from any agency appropriation and requiring matching funds for purposes of processing donated Wyoming meat for school lunches during the next 2 years. JAC adopted $260,000 from the general fund, one-time equivalent position, and footnote 2 for increasing staffing in the finance unit. JAC added $100,000 from the general fund and footnote 4 to provide support to the Wyoming Boys State and Girls State for civics education. And finally, the JAC adopted a technical correction to reduce 1,374 for SR for 300 series cost allocation. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, it's pretty straightforward, and that concludes my explanation of Section 206.
Are there questions on Section 206? I see a finger in the air, Senator Kinski.
Yes, just one add-on is there's a net new 9 FTEs in this department. And let's see if we can just track them down here real quick. Let me see, 3 is a transfer. 6 is the add of a FTE. I get these questions all the time, so I may as well get them answered now. Looks like 7 is increased pay. 8 is FTEs. Twelve is FTEs. That was my motion. We'll follow up on second reading as to identify exactly which of those, so for those that are interested in asking, I can't identify. Okay.
Senator Rother.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question on, in the budget footnote 5, page 84, which relates to the meat processing, $50,000. I'm curious, and it does have in the final sentence that if these funds are exhausted, more funds will be sought out to continue the program. What does the demand appear to be for that program? Because that seems like a very good program for food school lunches in the state of Wyoming, and I think we'd like to encourage that. I actually want to know, is that a sufficient amount of money?
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the testimony that we had was that not only was it a program that people supported, but I think we did talk about the dollar amount. We felt that this was a satisfactory amount. And I also believe I heard testimony that obviously that the agency would come back and tell us if more was needed, what the success in the next biennium is going to be. But there was almost universal support for obvious reasons on the JAC that this was a program that we wanted support. And reminding me of another bill, keeping local produce in the community with those dollars is a very attractive program. So, yes.
Yeah, shameful plugging. Thank you. Is there further discussion on 206? Senator Kinski, go ahead, sir.
So let's back to page 51. New FTEs, for those that are interested, are footnotes 6, 7, 12, 16, 17, and 18. That's 8. We're missing 1. We'll track it down over the weekend. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion on section 206? Seeing none, section 206 will be closed. The next item for discussion is section 211. Senator Garreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring you Section 211, Board of Equalization. It's on page 52 of the SR, page 85 of your budget book. As you can see, there are only 2. We adopted the JAC adopted the GovsRec on reclassifying positions and then the TRP. So any questions on Section 211?
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am just wondering, with the extraordinary tax increases we've seen in property tax this year, just kind of looking into a crystal ball a little bit, I wonder if there will be more challenges from individuals who really dislike their property tax bill. And if we have any kind of forecast or measure of whether or not that might trickle up to the Board of Equalization and perhaps affect some of their workload. I was just curious if JAC talked about that as they were preparing the budget.
Senator Garreau, peering into your crystal ball. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's a little fuzzy today, but it was discussed, and, you know, they're concerned. They did not ask for more resources right now. They felt that what their request was, or what the governor's recommendation was adequate for this year. But we did talk about the possible eventuality of a additional ask in the supplemental. So, but for right now, they felt okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further question or discussion on section 211? Hearing none, section 211 will close. The next section for our consideration is section 220. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I bring you section 220, Equality Council, Quality Council, and I'm taking from their information, they have a budget of 396, and they have 2 employees. So the Environmental Quality Council is the quasi-judicial agency responsible for holding hearings on environmental issues in Wyoming. The EQC is a citizen council, 7 members appointed by the governor with the consent of the Senate. The staff supports the EQC is provided executive secretary and a business coordinator, and that's all the employees that they have, and they hear lots of these issues, and they have a agenda to complete them in 90 days and get a ruling out. So they do a good job for the DEQ. Thank you.
Questions or comments on section 220? Seeing none, I'll close section 220. Next section for consideration is section 270. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So honorable members, I bring you Section 270, Office of Administrative Hearing. Can be found on page 52 of the SR or page 86 of your budget book. It's rather straightforward. One line, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $18,000 and the SR one time for information technology hardware replacement through the Technology Replacement Program. And for those of you who perhaps don't know what this office does, the sole function of the OAH is to conduct fair and impartial contested case hearings statewide in disputes between Wyoming residents or guests and the state governmental operations. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude the explanation for Section 270.
Discussion or questions on section 270? Seeing none, we will close section 270, which brings us for our next session for discussion, section 012. Senator Garreau.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. We're at that time in the budget where we go over the boards and commissions. And you know, neither can I. I got to tell you, they've been mine for a few years now, and I tell you what, I love them dearly. But here's the way your JACs has asked to approach this, of course, without your objection. What we're going to run is two global motions. The first, going through the boards and commissions that just work within their own revenue, that have no exception requests, just funded through their own fees that are collected. I'll make that motion. If you object, we'll talk about it, but that's the first motion. Then there'll be a second with all the ones that actually have a dollar amount and a little commentary on that. And so then we could ask questions on that. So I'll begin and then we'll go from there, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, absent objection, I move that the Committee of the Whole consider the following boards and commissions en bloc. These boards and commissions can be found in your budget bill on pages 8 on the budget bill on 86 through 100 and in your SR on pages 53 through 64. The following boards are funded exclusively with special revenue and do not have any exception requests beyond their standard budgets. This would be the sections. Section 012, Board of Architects and Landscape Architects. 017, Board of Radiologic Technological Examiners, Technologists Examiners, that's a tough one. 18, the Real Estate Commission. 22, Board of Respiratory Care. 28, Board of Registration in Podiatry. 30, Board of Chiropractic Examiners. 34, Dental Examiners. 35, Board of Funeral Service Practitioners. 36, Board of Midwifery. 43, Dietetics Licensing Board. 56, Examiners in Optometry. 58, Board of Speech, Language, Pathology, and Audiology. 59, Pharmacy. 61, Certified Public Accountants. 62, Physical Therapy. 64, Hearing Aid Specialists. 65, Board of Athletic Trainers. 78, Mental Health Professional Licensing Board. 79, Board of Nursing Home Administrators. 83, Board of Occupational Therapy. 84, Board of Professional Geologists. 51, Board of Veterinary Medicine, and 252, Board of Acupuncture.
Now you take a breath. Okay. Is there any discussion on all those? Which I will read off again. No questions or discussion. Okay, we will close those sections as follows. Section 12, Section 17, Section 18, Section 022, Section 28, Section 30, Section 034, Section 035, 036, 043, 056, 058, 059, 061, 062, 064, 065, 078, 079, 083, 084, 251, and 252. No discussion, those sections are closed. Whew.
Okay, Senator Guru, I believe that brings us to 033, is that correct?
Well, actually, I got a couple extras.
Okay.
Let me,
19, oh, I'm sorry, 19.
let me, 16 first, but let me.
Okay, 16 would be fine.
Okay, now, that having been completed, now we're going to move to the ones that do have some small requests, so if you'll bear with me. Mr. Chairman, after the previous boards and commission block consideration, this would leave 9 boards and commissions with exception requests that the committee could take as we move them numerically. The Joint Appropriations Committee did adopt the GUS-REC for all 9 of the boards. The only JAC addition to these 9 boards can be found in Section 38, the Wyoming Gaming Commission, where the JAC added an appropriation of $200,000 in special revenue dollars and footnote number 1 for a statewide study of gaming in Wyoming. These sections include 016, barber examiners on page 87 of the budget bill, 53 of the SR. 019, Professional Teaching Standards Board on page 88 and page 54 of the SR. Board of Cosmetology, number 33, on page 90 of the budget bill, 56 of the SR. Number 38, the Wyoming Gaming Commission, on page 92 of the budget bill and 57 of the SR. Section 46, the Wyoming Combat Sports Commission, one of our personal favorites, and that's on page 93 of the budget bill, 58 of the SR. The board, 52, the Board of Medicine, on page 94 of the budget bill, 58 of the SR. Number 54, the Board of Nursing, on page 94 of the budget bill, 59 of the SR. Number 68, the Board of Psychology, on page 97 of the budget bill, and 61 of the SR. And last but not least, number 75, the Board of Outfitters and Guides, on page 98 of the budget bill, and 62 of the SR. Be glad to stand for any questions that you may have.
Questions? No questions or discussion on those sections, which I will read. Section 016, no further discussion on any of these. 016, 019, 033, 038, 046, 052, 054, 068, and finally 075. Those sections are closed. The next session. Okay. The next section for our consideration is, Senator Kinski, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, we are now at the 300s. So we are on page 101 of the budget book, and I'd suggest in addition to SR, you're really going to want to have 101 open. These 300s get complicated enough that you kind of flip back and forth a little bit. With regard to, let's see, the 300 is mine, and this gets fairly complicated. We start with, on page 101, 300A, auditor is authorized to transfer to the general fund from any funds within the BRA, so forth, enough to maintain cash flow, boilerplate, same every year. B, any inappropriate amounts in the budget reserve account on June 30 in excess of 152 million shall be transferred to the LISRA. We have a rule that the BRA has to contain 5% of our general fund. That's what the estimate is right now, is 152, boilerplate. Okay, C. Here, the JAC directed the state auditor to transfer $174 million to the SIPA account. And this SIPA account started out as what it says, Strategic Investments and Projects Account, and now it's been carved up in different ways. Part of it, 45% of it, provides a backstop to school major maintenance that happened during the dark days of the downturn. D, state auditor shall transfer $100 million to the Wyoming Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. E, the auditor shall transfer $190 million to the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund Reserve Account. F, the auditor shall transfer $200 million to the Large School Capital Construction Holding Account, which is hereby created. So another account is created. After we got rid of School Capital Construction Account last time, now we're recreating it in a budget footnote 300F. Funds within large school capital construction holding accounts will only be expended upon legislative appropriation invested by the treasurer. We'll have more discussion, I'm sure, in second and third reading about all of those. G, state auditor shall transfer $200 million to the Common School Permanent Fund Reserve account. And then H, the state auditor shall transfer $20 million from the general fund to Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Endowment Fund. I'm on page 102 of the budget bill. J, there's a lot of money moving around in 300 series. State auditor shall transfer $16 million from the general fund to the Water Development Account 1. K, state auditor shall transfer $10 million from the general fund to the Wyoming State Museum Construction Account, which is hereby created. Another coffee can. Can't have enough coffee cans. And then M, state auditor shall transfer $2,340,000 from the general fund to the Capitol Square Preservation Account for purposes of security bollards, acquisition of maquettes, small statues, they're small reproductions of the statues that are in the rotunda, and acoustical remedies and improvements. You should also write a note here, see also 303E. 303E reverts another $1 million previously appropriated for acoustics. So that's a total of $3,340,000 to the Capitol Square Preservation Account. N, state auditor shall transfer $5,800,000 from the general fund to the Wyoming Stable Token Administration Account. So what this is the stable token account has its own account, SO, I think it's called. Here they take general fund money, put it into that account, and then back in their budget, they draw on their own account. So this is a bookkeeping thing for that money. So that is the 300A through N. Let me stop for questions.
Questions on 300A through M? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just hoping for a breakdown of that Capitol Square preservation account and how those funds are going to be split between those items, if you could share that information.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, if I had it, I would. I don't know that it exists. I can certainly ask Co-Chairman Nicholas to see if he's got a breakdown. I don't know of one. I do have an estimate that just the acoustical work is projected to cost $3.4 million, so I don't know where there's room for bollards and maquettes.
Back to you, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it is my recollection that that information was provided by the co-chairman who serves on the Capitol Square Improvement Project. I know we have the chairman of that actual committee here in this room. It's my recollection that the acoustics challenges that you experience both in this room and throughout the Capitol, that the bulk of that money is going to acoustics. Exactly, a smaller amount of that money is going to the ballast outside, which are those jersey barriers. Those are not affixed, and so we would be replacing those with a more secure piece of construction. And then the maquettes, which are required to be purchased by the artist. We do have that breakdown. It was provided in very specific detail, I believe at the February 6th hearing, but I know that our chairman of our committee can provide additional insight regarding the millions of dollars being appropriated so that this building can be more effective both for the public and ourselves, so we can actually hear the important discussions that are occurring.
Chairman Landon.
So just to weigh in real quickly, fellow senators, there are a couple of subcommittees working on behalf of the State Building Commission. One of those, I serve with the chairman of House Appropriations and another member representative from the other body. Those are the three legislators who serve on the Capital Wayfinding and Historic Exhibit Committee. You've heard me talk about that before. We've worked on it the last year and a half or so, and it does include the charge of taking a look at all of the issues surrounding the acoustics in this building. Now, there is a second subcommittee that is underway and working, and it also has representation from the legislative branch. The idea being that all of this area of the world, the Capitol itself and all of the Capitol Square, is an executive branch and legislative branch cooperative effort. So the other subcommittee is all about what are we going to do outside of this building. And some of this funding, I apologize, I do not have a breakdown of this particular line item, but some of this goes to everything from the placement of monuments to walkways to the barriers that the good senator pointed out. So this is all related to this block area from down here in the center part of the capital city. And it includes even beyond that a little bit, as you get over to the State Museum, the Supreme Court's over here, all of that is under the observation and planning effort of that other subcommittee. I hope that helps, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Pappas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and I do sit on that other subcommittee. And to the point of security, it is not only the Jersey barriers that we need to replace, but we're looking at security on the north side of, or on the north side of the Hirschler building as well, and also on the I guess it'd be the east side of the Supreme Court building. So it's not just in front of our Capitol. And it's not only just bollards, there's other security concerns that we're looking at as well. So, thank you.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add some color to the discussion on the State Museum, as it's been a topic for the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resource Committee for a few years now. A few years ago, we took a tour of the existing location that's just across the way here on Capitol Avenue. And we got a peek behind the curtain to see what's in that collection. And senators, if you ever get a chance to do that, I would highly recommend it. I think the things that really stood out in my memory are the collection of art pieces, the Native American collection, it's irreplaceable. This last interim, though, we also were able to travel to a site off location, a large warehouse in southwest of the city. And we learned about some of the challenges they've had in making that space adequate to house the number of things that the State Museum collects. And they have people from all over the state of Wyoming every year who have amazing items they want to donate, and they have to go through a process to determine whether or not those items are of significant value or longevity or contribute to telling the story of Wyoming. And I'm kind of butchering that mission to some degree. But the things they have in their collection, they have automobiles, they have horse saddles, more Native American items, more pieces of art, and it's remarkable. The problem is, if we don't take care of those structures that house these collections, they have this beautiful collection of leather saddles, and there was concern about mold. Because you can imagine, if the temperature's not right, if the humidity levels aren't right, the conditions in those buildings can really deteriorate the quality of what we're trying to preserve to tell the story of Wyoming. So it is something that the TRW committee has been looking at. We've been studying up on it. I would encourage anyone, if you ever get a chance or want a tour, I guarantee someone will want to show you around that place. That is the story of Wyoming that should be preserved and protected for future generations. And so we can either plan for that and try and value what we have, or we risk those items maybe not being there in the future for future generations. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Oh, Senator Hutchings.
Mr. Chair, a quick question on just that particular area, K and I believe it's F. Is it typical to create new sections within, or kind of like law within the budget? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
One more. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer that question, I would refer you to the 2022 budget bill and take you to the 30 pages of Section 300s in the 2022 budget bill. I would take you to the supplemental budget and look at the Section 300s. And then I would take you to every single budget bill in the previous 100 years and take a look at the Section 300s.
Senator Kinski.
As I had alluded at the outset, Mr. Co-Chair, in response to Senator Hutchins' question, there's been a waxing and waning in terms of what's stuffed into the budget, both in the budget itself and in the footnotes. In 2016, Dave Gruber was alarmed enough about it that he wrote a memo and said, hey, we gotta back off of this a little bit. My personal feeling is we should not be creating new programs in the budget. We do have a constitutional restriction that says the budget is for the ordinary expenses of state government. If it's not an ongoing expense, what's it doing in the budget? If you want to create a new category, a new thing, we also have something that says every bill, every legislative initiative shall be in a bill, and there shall be but a single subject. So it seems to me that the creation of a fund and trying to build whatever, an arboretum, a state, this is not, and we'll get into that, I suppose, on second and third reading, but the budget bill is supposed to be for the ordinary expenses of state government, interest on the public debt, and appropriations for the schools. And so then it's a question of whether creating a scholarship, an endowment, a construction account fits within that definition, and I think we'll have that debate in the coming days. Anything else on the section 300s from folks, 300A to N?
Senator Lamb. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the good senator's words. I would say that having served on your Appropriations Committee a few years ago, we've always had lots of 300s. And so we certainly will have some discussion about that. But I did want to touch on something just so that you know a little bit of background of what we're dealing with respect to school facilities. There's any number of approaches to this effort to try to re-engage on the school facilities front. As you all know, about the last 5 or 6 years, we've had things in neutral for our fleet of schools out there, over 25 million square feet of space that we are responsible for, 400 or 500 buildings. And we have done our best to set aside some money for major maintenance, but we haven't built much. And that's because we haven't had the money available to us. Well, now, after this most recent assessment, which was done 6 years ago, and it was the first one we've done since then, we have lots of new things to consider. I won't belabor it now, would be glad to visit with anybody about the history, the last 10, 12 years of school facilities, but I will tell you that on the list for your consideration now are 2 major high schools. And in order to set a high school on the ground nowadays, you're talking probably $150 million each. So how are we going to approach that? The good senator just mentioned that we shouldn't be putting coffee cans or set-asides or anything like that in the budget, but I would ask that you think about how are we going to go ahead and eat a sandwich that big, just even if it's one school building. By the way, we've got another one up in Campbell County that's going to be about the same amount. So we got 2 high schools, and that doesn't even count all of the other districts out across the state, Mr. Chairman. So do we begin to set something aside, knowing that a few years down the road, we're going to have to address it, right? Or do we just say, you know what? We hope that we've got a big old chunk of money sitting there 4 or 5 years down the road because we don't want to have a new line item in the budget. So that, I hope, gives you a little bit of background as to, whether we do it or not. We've got some things on the horizon out there in terms of school facilities. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to address the assertion that the LSO prepared this 2016 memo because they were concerned that we were legislating in the budget. This memo is an exceptional memo, and everybody has it on your desk, but it was a request by the legislature, by legislators, to investigate what is the appropriate scope of the budget and really getting into 300 series and footnotes and other conditions. And it wasn't that there was calamity, it wasn't that Mr. Groover was concerned, it was that, as always, Mr. Groover, as would any of our Legislative Service Office, was doing their job in request to inquiries from the legislators and the legislature to explore what was appropriate with regard to the conditions of the ordinary expenses of the legislature, executive and judicial branch of the state. I don't think everybody probably has taken the time to read this memo, because it is a long memo. But if you're concerned, if you're genuinely concerned about what is and isn't constitutional, take the 30 minutes to an hour over this weekend, probably not on your drive home, but once you get there and you're resting, take the time to read the whole thing, because you'll find it's incredibly nuanced. The idea that we could simplify it in short debate is inaccurate. The idea that it's clear and that courts have ruled is pointedly inaccurate, because one of the things that is pointed out in here is that there has never been a Wyoming Supreme Court case to even rule on whether a budget amendment has or has not been related specifically to the ordinary expenses of the government. Mr. Chairman, it further points out in here that specifically on K-12 education, there is no need for it to be specific to the ordinary expenses of the legislature, legislative, executive branch, et cetera, because on K-12 education, elsewhere in the Constitution, it makes it very clear that the legislature is responsible for all aspects of funding. So it's not the clear-cut, is the 300 series appropriate, is it not? Are certain footnotes yes or no? It comes down to, as do so many things, the interpretation of this body, the interpretation of these legislators as to whether or not you're comfortable with that. But Mr. Chairman, I'll note one other thing, that this body spends a lot of time resting on tradition and historical practice. And that is something that even our manual of legislative procedure is called out explicitly. That if it's consistent with the way it's been done in the past, that has a genuine standing in our order of rules, our order of appropriateness, in determining whether it's now appropriate for us to act in that way. So it matters. It matters if it's precedent in the legislature as to whether it's appropriate. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that there is no characterization that this memo somehow says that something in this particular budget is or is not unconstitutional. That was not the intent. There are no bright lines within this memo, but it is an exceptional historical document that everyone in here should take the time to read thoroughly if you have concern about this. And you'll at least understand all of the context to have the framework to determine whether you, as an individual legislator, feel that something is or is not constitutional. And it is individually going to be up to all of us. That's our oath, to uphold the Constitution. We have a great deal of support for that understanding. And then, finally, and inevitably, it would be up to the courts if challenged. But recall, to this point, it has not been challenged. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a question on 300H. Does anyone know what the balance is on that endowment fund, the Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Endowment Fund? I probably have it somewhere, but I don't know where to look.
Further discussion. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, I think it's important to note, because I do have concerns when there's allegations that the budget may be unconstitutional, or an inference to that. All 5 and all 7 members of both houses voted for this bill. At no time during the interim or over the 21 days that we spent over the last 3 months preparing this budget was a concern over the constitutionality of Section 300s ever mentioned. So the appropriateness of bringing that to you here now is concerning to me. But let's move on. You heard some explanation and history about that memo and how legal opinions can be used for whichever side you're on. I urge caution when you look for those legal opinions. But that's a side note. But I want to draw your attention to a point of conversation just on F, on the 300 series. I looked forward to bringing this issue to your attention. I brought it up to you before. I had concerns about it. We previously eliminated the school capital construction account, and here it is recreated. Now, what does that mean? Should we be, beating our chests and saying, oh my gosh, this is so terrible? Big spenders here. This is wrong, wrong, wrong. Is it though? I mean, really, this is an important conversation for this body to have. This is the policy considerations we should be making. How to save money, which is what this provision does. It says that $200 million will be set aside for building schools, whatever schools they may be. And as we all know in our districts, schools need to be built. They will always need to be built, and how that works certainly is appropriate for conversation. But should this body set aside money for that purpose, which we know has to be expended? And so then how that money gets set aside, this is one method. I look forward to your thoughts on another, and quite frankly, have no particular whim on either, but I do know that money needs to be set aside for the building of schools. We know that $200 million is a good chunk of money to start that. It cannot be expended without your approval. It requires additional legislative appropriation, and it shall be invested with the state treasurer's funds. I'd say that's pretty prudent, pretty cautious, pretty conservative. But if you would like to save that $200 million in another account, I don't think that's that big of a deal. So I'd just like to take us all back a minute and not get so upset perhaps about this piece. Wherever you want to save $200 million is where you want to save $200 million, but we need to save money for school capital construction, period. That needs to be invested by the treasurer, and that should only be appropriated by this body. That's what F does. So again, I look forward to the conversation and your ideas for where that money should be saved elsewhere for purposes of school capital construction.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, is this an appropriate time for privilege of the floor?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce to the Senate an old friend of the Senate, Foy Jolly, who served us for 20 years in the Capitol Police Force, back when that was separate, and who served us for 9 years as a member of the staff here. Foy's visiting us today. I ask you to give him a warm Senate welcome.
Today's not good. Yeah. Go ahead, Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, somebody from the back already picked up on this too, but I think that it is Foy's birthday today. I think he's celebrating 84 years. Is that correct? 84 today. How about that? How about a happy birthday?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Floyd. Good catch, Senator Landon. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we want to get back to our discussion?
Okay, we're back to discussion. Let's go ahead with yours, and then we'll go back to Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to respond to my colleague who sits right in front of me about what the Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship is. Senators, you might recall that this has been a lot of work of your Joint Education Committee over the years, and we passed a bill in 2022, which is now codified at 2116, 1900, et sequitur. The requirements start at section 1903, which creates the scholarship. And so some of the requirements are that the person be, sorry, I'm just having a hard time seeing my screen. The student has demonstrated Wyoming residency for not less than a year and not less than total 3 years at any time prior to the application. The student's 24 years of age or older, because we didn't want to catch Hathaway students or students that were eligible for the Hathaway. That the student complete the federal application for student aid, FAFSA, I think it's more formally called, and that the student agreed to register with the Department of Workforce Services to see if there were any other training programs available or funding available through those programs. We also included some non-eligibility requirements. One, if the student's receiving a Hathaway scholarship, which there are some mechanisms that allow older students to use it, they would be prohibited from applying. They have to be a United States citizen or permanent resident. They can't owe a refund under certain federal financial programs. They can't currently be incarcerated, but we left it, if they were back in the community, they could apply. And that they had previously, this is a disqualifier, that they had previously received a scholarship under this article for 4-time academic terms for a total of $7,200 in scholarships for unmet financial needs. So there's some means testing. We're really trying to capture an older workforce to try and reach our education attainment goals. I think Wyoming has struggled in comparison to a lot of other states, including our neighbors, about how many people have advanced degrees, associate's degree, or certain kinds of certificates. So this was a mechanism to try and get more degrees in more hands of working Wyoming citizens. So I just wanted to answer those questions, but they're currently codified in that Title 21, 1902.
Thank you. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quickly to my friend from Sugar Beet Country who asked, what is the balance of the Wyomings tomorrow? It's 30.5 million. There's a threshold. It has to reach 50 million before they can start spinning income off into scholarships. With that, if there's no more questions.
No more questions.
We close 300 and go to lunch.
Okay, that closes section 300. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Senate the Committee of the Whole beg to sit and rise again.
You've heard the motion. What is your pleasure? All in favor, say aye.
Beg to leave and sit again.
All opposed, say no. Wow, everyone's asleep, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Do we stand in recess? Nope, wait, no. The Committee of the Whole stands at ease.
Okay, so we didn't come out of the Committee of the Whole. He just says Committee of the Whole stands at ease. Point of order. I think the motion was that the committee beg leave to rise and sit again.
That's correct. The motion was the Committee of the Whole take leave and rise again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
They're awake this time. All opposed, say no. That motion passes. Mr. President.
Okay, we're back into normal business. We're going to do a few explanations of where we're at. Some of this was done by me, some by Majority Floor Leader Hicks, real quick. As far as the little deal this morning we did on the Ag Committee, we think we've had a resolution. I'm going to read something off to you and we'll go from there. And then Senator Hicks will talk a little bit about order for this afternoon, and then we'll go ahead and go out for lunch. So Rules Committee met briefly this morning to discuss the issue of the appropriateness under the Senate rules of the 6 members currently serving on the Senate Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee. In the interest of including the Senate's business on introductory votes and explanation of the budget bill on Committee of the Whole today, the Rules Committee will formally take up this issue at a meeting on Tuesday, February 20th at 9 a.m. The Rules Committee will then announce its determination to the Senate. Without objection, until the Rules Committee makes a formal decision, I will deem all actions of the Senate Agriculture Committee taken to date during the session to be appropriate and ratified by the Senate. So that's, if anyone's got an objection to it, we'll burn more time, and otherwise Tuesday, I encourage anybody that's got an interest show up at my office, and we're going to work our way through this. I appreciate everybody's patience on it. We're all all having a lot of tough issues today is going to get a lot of our stuff done. We're going to get through introductions and we're going to get our stuff. I may, for notice, lay back our general file until Monday because of time constraints, just so we're not here till midnight. Senator Hicks, Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, just to reiterate, so we'll come back in at 1:15. We're going to go straight to introductions. That should take about 2 hours. Then we're going to go right back into the budget. If we can get that done, my plan is then to go ahead and do some general files. We need to keep those general files rolling, folks. So that's the plan. Can't tell you when we're going to get out of here. You guys control that.
Mr. Majority Floor, real quick, did you make the motion for recess? Need it, and then we go, okay. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request that Senate File 118, Bighorn and Domestic Sheep Reclassification Federal Action, be moved from Committee Number 5, Agriculture, to Committee Number 8. Oh, nope, not 8, sorry.
6.
6, Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife, without objection.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Hicks, motion.
Mr. President, I move that we stand recess until 1.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Mr. President, I move that we stand recessed until 1:15.
Are there any announcements? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs will meet at, let's say, 12:20 at Capitol Extension Room W2 line to consider the following Senate files. Senate File 113, Light and High Profile Vehicle Closures 2. Senate File 16, Military Department Emergency Fire Suppression Account.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Minerals Committee Number 9 is going to meet just a few minutes down in Room 4 to hear Senate File 41 Banking Division Classification and finish up low carbon reliable energy standards. We may or may not be getting into limited mining operations, Senate File 44. We're just limited. You just heard the time on that luncheon. It's abbreviated. So we're probably going to do the first 2. And so with that, I've already alerted the lunch that Senator Ellis, Senator Jones, Senator Rothfuss, Senator Cooper, your sandwiches are waiting for you. Walk en route and eat while you head down there. Thank you.
And that's an order.
Thanks.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I don't have a formal announcement here in front of me yet, but I wanted to just give a heads up to our Judiciary Committee. We have a busy week next week trying to get bills out of that committee. So we will meet at 7:30 on Monday morning and get started. We have 4 bills on the docket. We have identified a time of 5 o'clock on Monday evening that the Judiciary Committee will come back in to try to meet the workload, and then we have another couple of meetings after that. But Monday will be a busy day, so Mr. President, I just wanted to give that heads up. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 10, first heads up, we'll meet Monday morning at 8 a.m. We're going to be hearing 3 bills, Senate File 57, Wyoming Adult Hearing Aid Program, Senate File 69, Hospice Care Reimbursements, Senate File 115, Behavioral Health Redesign Amendments 2. We need 3 bills. They're not extensive bills, but they'll take a little while, so committee, please be ready for them. We'll try to get them done and out. Thank you.
Senator Case.
Mr. President, this is just kind of a non-specific announcement, but your Committee Number 7, Corporations, has a lot of bills on its plate. Our only day to meet will be Tuesday. We actually, Senator Landon and I both serve on the different committees, but we're the same committee, different chairman. Try to work around that. So Tuesday, it's going to be a long day, and you can expect us to perhaps have 3 meetings that day, a morning meeting, a noon meeting, and an upon adjournment meeting. I don't know any other way to do it because the deadline is Wednesday, and that slot's not available. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dedication to you and your committee. Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and to that issue, one of the things that we have talked about, so Tuesday upon adjournment, and so for consideration, we will have LSO and representatives from the Department of Revenue and the Wyoming County's Assessor Association. Any property tax bills that are still alive at that time, We'll be meeting downstairs to go through those with those, to have a question and answer session with those folks to help maybe provide some guidance before we get into final debate on all of the property tax bills that may or may not be showing up here in the Senate. So just if you're chairman, if you can work that into your schedule, that'd be helpful. Anyway, that's the best time we could get to get this done, Mr. President.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Stands recessed until 1:15 PM. Thank you, guys. Hopefully we don't have a long day.